Welcome back, Blueshirts fans, to episode number 701 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, the Rangers see their three-game winning streak snapped last night at home in Madison Square Garden against the Boston Bruins. A competitive game throughout. A little bit of a slow start for the Rangers. Seemed to get it going a little bit toward the end of the first period. Had a great second period, and then it all kind of came crashing down in the third period, and the Rangers end up losing 5-2, despite being tied 1-1 going into the third period and having an opportunity to win it. I think the biggest thing in this game, as far as why the Rangers kind of ran out of gas there, and this is not to make excuses or anything like that, it's just a statement of fact. When you lose one of your defensemen, just about 10 minutes into the game, and he only ends up with about 3 minutes and change of ice time, that's not good. It's going to adversely affect any team's ability to win the game, particularly against this Boston Bruins team, which is off to a phenomenal start to the season. They are now 10-1. And of course, I'm talking about Ryan Lindgren. Ryan Lindgren injured thanks to a hit from David Pastrnak, or we think that's where he got injured. He actually stayed out there for an extra shift or two after that. But we're going to talk about that in greater detail in just a second. Also going to talk about how this is a very physical game, and it basically became fight night at Madison Square Garden. I mean, I guess as far as the fighting is concerned, it was just the two fights, and they happened simultaneously, but still, chippy, nasty game. It's kind of what you've come to expect as far as Rangers versus Bruins is concerned. And I'm also going to talk about something that has kind of, I don't want to say plagued the Rangers this season. That word's a little bit too strong, but something that's a little bit of a concern so far this season for the Rangers is the lack of secondary scoring. And I got some stats to back that up, and we're going to talk about that in due time as well. But I did want to start with Ryan Lindgren and just kind of get into everything that happened here and what led to him getting injured and, having to leave the game. And, of course, if Ryan Lindgren leaves the game, it had to be pretty serious. This guy plays through everything. Guy's tough as nails. Just that old-school throwback defenseman who, he wants to go out there and mix it up. This is a Ryan Lindgren kind of game, Rangers versus Bruins, and he had really brought it, prior to getting injured. He had the big hit on Pastrnak. He had a big hit on I forget, it was Bergeron, I think, was the second guy that he got. So two big hits from Lindgren early in this game, and he's going to be out there mixing it up. He's had some run-ins with Brad Marchand in the past for sure. But as far as what led to him leaving the game, so first period, the Bruins have the puck in the Rangers zone. Pastrnak has the puck. Ryan Lindgren approaches him, checks him into the boards, knocks him to the ice. A big hit, big crunch in the corner there. Clean as it gets. As clean of a hit as you will see in the NHL. And then what happens after that? Well, Pastrnak decides that he needs to retaliate. And Lindgren had the puck, and he moved the puck, and Pastrnak hit him very late and basically blindsided him. He kind of came from the side a little bit, but Lindgren had no idea he was there, no idea he was going to get hit. And I guess, you could say that's somewhat on Lindgren, I suppose. But this is clearly a retaliation by Pastrnak here. It's not, the dirtiest thing you'll ever see on a hockey rink. It's not like Tom Wilson levels of egregious or anything like that. But I didn't like this because it was so obvious that Pastrnak was just looking for revenge here. And to be fair, the refs saw it and they, called him for the penalty there, and the Rangers got a power play out of it. But it just sucks because, Ryan Lindgren puts a clean hit on Pastrnak, and Pastrnak can't accept the fact that, he was just knocked to the ice, so he's got to go on his revenge quest here. Hits Lindgren well after Lindgren had gotten rid of the puck, and again, I think this is the area of the game where Ryan Lindgren got injured. I didn't see anything else, so, Lindgren hits Pastrnak clean. Pastrnak throws a fit, essentially, has to go looking to get him back on the same shift. Look, it's early in the first period. Pastrnak, he'll have his chances later in the game to give a receipt to Lindgren or somebody else on the Rangers, whatever it might be. And instead, he kind of goes after Lindgren out of nowhere here and puts a hit on him that's questionable. And as a result of this, Lindgren's out for this game, and he's considered day-to-day. Who knows how many more games he's going to miss? It's Lindgren, so you almost expect him to be back out there in the next one. The Rangers play Sunday against Detroit. But it just sucks again because, Lindgren puts a clean hit on Pastrnak, Pastrnak retaliates, and Lindgren's the one that's injured because of it. And Lindgren could now miss some time, and Pastrnak today is probably shooting, some terrible Dunkin' Donuts commercial or something along those lines. So very unfortunate there. As far as, Ryan Lindgren, just the effects of him being out of the game, I think it was pretty obvious that, the Ranger defensemen were pretty gassed down the stretch in this game. Maybe the Rangers in general were a little bit gassed. The Bruins basically took control in the third period. They went up 2-1 early. The Rangers got it right back on a goal by Adam Fox, but then 3 unanswered goals by the Bruins to close out this game. Granted, the last one was an empty netter, but be that as it may, the Bruins basically took it to the Rangers in the third, and I think a big reason for that, and look, the Bruins might have won this game anyway, credit where it's due. They're obviously off to a fantastic start, but one of the biggest reasons for me is that Ryan Lindgren wasn't out there. Ryan Lindgren is the heart and soul of this New York Ranger team. We saw just how important he was last year in the playoffs. You think about that series against the Penguins. He missed games 2, 3, and 4. He's back out there for game 5, and all of a sudden the Rangers actually stand a chance against the Crosby line, which for a while there they didn't at all. The Crosby line was skating circles around them. Ryan Lindgren really makes a difference for this team. One of the leaders, one of the unsung heroes of this New York Ranger team, certainly last year when they had that deep playoff run. And you lose any defenseman, much less one as good as Ryan Lindgren. You lose any defenseman for the final 50 minutes of a game, you're going to be hurting for it, because now you got to go with 5 defensemen. Everybody's, on different pairings and having to play with this guy and having to play with that guy, so you're a little bit discombobulated from that aspect. And on top of that, the minutes are going to start piling up. The time on the ice is going to start piling up. And if you look at this game, as far as time on the ice is concerned, 4 of the remaining 5 Ranger defensemen all ended up playing more than 23 minutes. Miller, Fox, Trouba, and Jones all ended up with more than 23 minutes in this game. K'Andre Miller led the way with 26-20. And again, the Rangers looked gassed, and it really showed in the third period. And as far as, Ryan Lindgren potentially missing time going forward, it's going to be a big loss for the Rangers. They do not have the kind of depth at defenseman where they can really afford to lose anybody, because as soon as one of these top 6 guys is out of the lineup, Libor Hájek goes back in. Now, to be fair to Libor Hájek, I know he takes some heat from Ranger fans on Twitter and wherever else, and sometimes I understand why, because he hasn't lived up to being a former high draft pick and the guy that was one of the big pieces of the McDonough-Miller trade. So I get where some of the uneasiness from Ranger fans comes from when it comes to Libor Hájek. But overall this season, I think he's played fairly well when he's been out there, certainly giving you a little bit more than you would expect. So you just hope that the Rangers can, get by without Ryan Lindgren for a little while, and Libor Hájek can kind of hold down the fort. I'd be curious to see if if Lindgren ends up being out for multiple games, if Matthew Robertson gets a call up to the NHL. Might be a little bit premature for that. Maybe Ben Harper gets the call. He's the guy that the Rangers just picked up after they lost Jared Tenorti, thanks to the Blackhawks waiver claim. But they got some options. I do think the most likely outcome here, though, if Lindgren does miss this game against Detroit, is you'll just see Libor Hájek in the lineup. And I would think that maybe what they might do is they might put Zach Jones with Adam Fox. We saw him playing with Fox a little bit after Lindgren went down in this game. And in the past, there have been a couple of times where they have put Jones and Fox together out there. So I think that might be the move. You take Jones from the third pairing, you put him on the top pairing with Adam Fox, and then you go ahead and you slide Libor Hájek into the third pairing and you put him out there with Braden Schneider. Again, they have some options, and hopefully it works out. But I'd rather see, between Jones and Hájek, if one of them is going to end up with top 4 minutes in Ryan Lindgren's absence, I would rather it be Jones rather than Libor Hájek. But we'll see how they look to go there. I also want to talk about what turned out to be Fight Night, or a mini version of Fight Night at the Garden last night. So a lot happened here. So Braden Schneider, you got Frederick coming into the New York Rangers zone, and Frederick's got the puck, and Schneider delivers just a menacing hit, but it was also a very clean hit. And I realized, I took issue with what Pastrnak did. I'm saying Schneider had a clean hit here. I do stand by all that. It's also possible that, I'm looking at this the way that I want to see this, as obviously a Ranger fan. But if you watch this replay from Braden Schneider, this is textbook shoulder-to-chest stuff right here. He absolutely destroyed him. A big pop from the Garden crowd there. They love that. Braden Schneider becoming, certainly a feared defenseman in this league, I would say. He hasn't been there for very long, but this guy will just absolutely whack you if he gets a chance to do it. And we saw that on display here. This is what Schneider had to say after the game. I've got a quote here. This was circulating on Twitter. This one comes to us from friend of the show, Vince Mercogliano. But this is what Schneider had to say regarding, him basically being attacked after he hit Frederick here. This is what Schneider said. I learned from the last time I hit someone, you've got to be ready to go. I'm happy with the hit and glad he didn't get hurt, and I didn't get any punches in the face too bad. Amen to all of that. So basically what happened, what he's alluding to here, is after he delivers this hit on Frederick, you've got Greer going after Schneider and basically just attacking him and forcing him into a fight. And Schneider, he's fine with that. He's a big, tough physical guy. He'll fight when the occasion calls for it. But you've got that happening, and then Frederick's going after Schneider as well, and that's when Barclay Goodrow jumped in, and then Frederick and Goodrow dropped the gloves as well. So you've got two fights happening at the same time, and these weren't just, just kind of wrestling back and forth. I mean, these guys were throwing some bombs, some big-time haymakers. I would say that Schneider certainly won his fight. Goodrow versus Frederick, I would say, was a little bit more even. Both of them landed some heavy punches, though, and, all four of these guys head to the sin bin. The thing that I liked here, though, is that the Rangers got a power play out of this. They actually called the instigator against the Bruins, which they should, because you should not have to fight for your life every single time you deliver a clean hit in this league. And that's kind of what's been going on over these past couple of seasons. If you put a big hit, especially on the star player from the other team, but not even necessarily a star player. I mean, Frederick is not exactly a superstar. He's an effective player for the Bruins, but not a superstar. And next thing you know, Braden Schneider has to fight for his life. So I'm glad that they called the instigator. Rangers got the power play out of it, did not score, but I do like the fact that the NHL in these situations is calling that instigator more often, seemingly recently over the last season or two, than they had in the past. So good stuff there. I do want to get into a topic that gives me a little bit of concern going forward. I mean, we're not at the point where I think we have to panic, but it is the Rangers' lack of secondary scoring. And like I said, we will get to that in just a second. But first, just got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the NHL, MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, and we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And so, like I said, a topic I want to talk about here is the secondary scoring, or lack thereof, rather. And I actually got to give a big shout out to my mom, because we were texting during this game last night and after it was over, and she pointed out something to me that I think I was aware of. It's just one of those things that, I look at it and, well, it's still early in the season. We're 10 games in, 11 games in, 12 games in. We got a long way to go here. But it's the fact that the Rangers, they basically, when it comes to offense, there's five guys. There's five guys that this team relies on. There's five guys that basically need to shoulder the load for this team when it comes to putting the puck in the net. And, the obvious hope is that other guys eventually step up, but thus far in the season, they have not done so. And of course, the five guys I'm talking about, you probably don't even need me to tell you who they are, but it's of course Mika, Kreider, Panarin, Fox, and Trocheck. Those are the guys that score on this team. Nobody else does anything offensively. And I got some stats to back that up. For starters, let's just look at some team stats here. So the Rangers have scored 34 goals in 12 games, a little bit less than 3 per game. It's not completely anemic, but you would be hoping for more than that. That is for sure. For some context, the Rangers have also allowed 36 goals in the first 12 games, so they've given up 2 more goals than they've scored. Rangers currently are at 2.83 goals per game. That's just 23rd in the league. So the Rangers are in the bottom third of the NHL in terms of goals per game. And again, it is still early. Stats like this, goals per game and goals allowed per game and shots per game, all this stuff is going to fluctuate and jump all over the place the first couple of weeks of the season. That's just the nature of the beast when there's not a big sample size. So obviously this can turn around. There is time. But again, for a team that has Panarin and Mika and Kreider and Fox and Trocheck, they're not exactly letting up the score sheet on a nightly basis. Those 5 players are. Nobody else is. And another stat that's somewhat concerning, I think, is that the Rangers, they've played 12 games. They have been held to 2 goals or fewer in 7 of those games. There's also been some games where they end up with like 6 or 7 goals. So it seems like they either just completely explode and just go off. They've done that a couple times this season, or, it's a kind of low-scoring game, and they just have to grind one out. But, outside of what we'll call the big 5 players, again, Panarin, Mika, Kreider, Fox, Trocheck, where is the scoring going to come from on this team? And to further illustrate my point here, let's just kind of take a look at these 5 players and compare them against the other players on the team. So as far as points that these guys have scored so far this season, Panarin has 16, Mika's got 14, Fox has 10, Kreider has 9, and Trocheck has 9. No one else on the Rangers has more than 5 points this season. And only 2 have that many. It's Kakko and Lafreniere. The 2 of them each have 5 points. Kakko had 2 assists last night, which got him up to 5 points. Lafreniere was sitting on 5 points heading into last night's game. And we might as well start right there as far as like secondary scoring is concerned. I think the 2 guys you look to before anybody else outside of the big 5 are Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere for obvious reasons that we've covered many, many times on this podcast. That, of course, being that they're very high draft picks and were very highly thought of when they came into the league. And the thing that's really tough about this is I do feel like, for the most part, Kakko and Lafreniere on most nights are playing pretty well. It just isn't resulting in points. We saw Kaapo Kakko in this game last night. He made just a sick move in the first period, faked the defenseman out of his skates, went to the net, did everything but finish. Obviously, Ullmark had a nice night for the Bruins, and he's been very good to start the season. He made the save there. We saw something similar from Kakko over the weekend. I believe it was against the Dallas Stars. He's weaving around like 3 or 4 guys going to the net and getting stopped right there on the doorstep. Let's hope that he hasn't caught, Julien Gauthier syndrome here, where he can do everything but finish. But Kakko's look good. He's an absolute bull when he's got the puck. I mean, if he's got the puck on his stick, it's very, very difficult for the opponents to take it away from him. So Kakko, honestly, man, it feels like he's playing better than he has maybe throughout his entire Ranger tenure. And I realize, he's fallen short of expectations. I do think he's gotten better with every passing season. But, again, for one reason or another, the points just aren't there. And this despite the fact that he's playing on the top line pretty much every single night. I mean, has he been off the top line since the start of the season? Maybe the first couple games, a few times there. But Kakko should have more than 5 points, playing on top line minutes with Mika and with Kreider, and it's just not happening right now. And that's what's so frustrating, is it does feel like he's playing better than the points would suggest. But bottom line is Kakko is not really giving you the secondary scoring right now. And you can say the same thing for Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, with Lafreniere, he's been playing pretty much on the second line all season with Panarin and with Trocheck. Panarin and Trocheck, obviously, Trocheck's the big free agent pickup, and you wonder, okay, well, how's he going to gel with Artemi Panarin? Man, I hope the 2 of them have chemistry, because Panarin had great chemistry with guys like Strome and with Kopp, and you want that same thing with Trocheck, and they've been awesome. Since the second Trocheck got here, the preseason notwithstanding, when everybody was losing their minds. But since they've been playing games that actually count, the 2 of them seem to be in lockstep. They really seem to have a knack for finding each other out there. And it feels like Lafreniere is right along for the ride. I mean, there's some good passing when that line is on the ice. I thought that line was once again the Rangers' best line last night. That's been the case a lot of times this season, where the Panarin line has been the best line for the Rangers. But again, it's just not resulting in points for Alexis Lafreniere. He had a chance last night. There was a play where he is along the boards. He gains the blue line, leads Panarin with a pass, up the right side. Panarin stops and plays it back to Lafreniere. Lafreniere's toward the center of the ice, and he's approaching the net. And you're thinking this is going to be a goal, and Lafreniere just shoots it into Ullmark's chest, basically. So, yeah, again, they're playing better than the stats would suggest, and that's what's so frustrating. And you just hope that sooner or later the dam breaks and Lafreniere and or Kakko just go off, because Lafreniere and Kakko having big-time seasons, that's not just a luxury at this point. That's not just a bonus at this point. That is something that needs to happen if the Rangers are going to be Stanley Cup contenders. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, again, that they eventually break through, but right now it's just frustrating to see them, do pretty well and try to build on the nice playoff run that they had last season and just seemingly not get rewarded for it. But they need more out of Kakko and Lafreniere. I mean, that's pretty much the long and short of it. I know, people point to, Kakko's good on the puck, and they're both better defensive players than they get credit for. That's all well and good. These guys need to produce some points. I mean, Kakko's former second overall pick, Lafreniere, the generational talent, the former first overall pick, and you just hope that that's on the way sooner rather than later. And, I mentioned a second ago while we're on the subject of the lack of secondary scoring here. I said that I hope Kaapo Kakko did not get Julien Gauthier syndrome, where once again he can do everything on the ice but finish. And I'm going to talk about Gauthier in greater detail in just a second as we continue to look around this roster and try to figure out, okay, who's going to step up and who's going to provide this team with some secondary scoring. And like I said, we're going to do all that in just a second. But first, just got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by SimpliSafe. If you thought about securing your home with home security, but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On New York Rangers listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is the biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for the 3rd year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that a threat is real so you can get priority police response. SimpliSafe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional, professionally installed system. With the top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that we recommend. Get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/NHL today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so do not wait. That is simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There is no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, so we'll keep everything rolling right along here as we continue our search up and down this Ranger roster for somebody that's going to produce some secondary scoring. And as I mentioned a second ago, I think that Kakko and Lafreniere are probably your two biggest candidates, the two that really need to get it going. And, you know, at a certain point, you would like Kakko and Lafreniere to not just be guys that are going to give you a secondary scoring. You want them to be two of the guys that are leading the charge night in and night out for the Rangers. And we'll hope that we get there. Like I said, I think that the points don't reflect their play. I mean, they haven't been perfect, but I do think they've been better than less than half point per game players thus far this season. But be that as it may, the points just aren't there. And I mentioned Julien Gauthier. You know, he gets called up after being placed on waivers and being sent down to the Hartford Wolfpack. And, okay, we're going to give Julien Gauthier a chance. Let's see what this kid can do one more time here. And, you know, the first 2 games he played pretty well. The Rangers got shut out by the Islanders, but there was a play in that game that got a lot of people excited. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon, just flying up the ice, making his move and getting denied on the doorstep, which has sadly become almost like par for the course for Julien Gauthier. But he had a chance there. He had a great game against the Stars as well. There was a play where, you know, he forced a turnover at the blue line, prevented the Stars from clearing the puck out of the zone, pass in deep to Trocheck. Trocheck then found Zach Jones in the center of the ice. Jones shot, scored, gave the Rangers a 4-3 lead. They went on to win 6-3, and that goal was the game winner, and it does not happen without the play that Julien Gauthier made there. And then, of course, 19 seconds after that, Julien Gauthier scores a goal of his own, basically just explodes up the center of the ice, splits a couple of defensemen. The goalie comes out to meet Gauthier, and puck, you know, kind of goes into the corner a little bit, or toward the corner. Gauthier tracks it down. The goalie's out of the net, and Gauthier scored from a really tough angle there. So you're thinking, man, could this be it? Could Julien Gauthier finally be taking off for the New York Rangers? We'll see, but honestly, in the 3 games that have followed since then, I've barely noticed Julien Gauthier out there. And sadly, again, it's not really a surprise that this happens, because Gauthier, again, he's a guy that always gives you flashes, always gets you excited. Man, this guy, he could really kind of, fortify the Rangers' third line, give you some secondary scoring. Hey, maybe he can even, make the occasional cameo in the top 6 under certain circumstances. And I've barely noticed him. I've barely seen him have the puck. I've barely heard his name called. He just has not done really much of anything in these last 3 games. And he's at a point right now where he's got 1 goal and 1 assist in 5 games. So 2 points in 5 games. And the way things go with Gauthier, I mean, is anybody really going to be surprised if, Gauthier gets to a point, 2 points in 5 games. If he gets to a point where he's 3 points in 15 games, is anybody really going to be surprised? And I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope Gauthier goes out there, has a multi-point game in the next one, and really sticks it to me for saying this. But again, we've seen this from Julien Gauthier before. These flashes, you get excited, and then there's just not much there. And I don't know that we can really rely on Julien Gauthier to be a source of secondary scoring. He's somebody that had like 7 points in 49 games, something along those lines last season. Again, fingers crossed that he picks it up, but I don't know that we're really seeing a reason to believe that he can do that. We see these flashes here and there, and then it just never really seems to come together. As far as other secondary scoring, what about Jimmy Vesey? Vesey obviously came back to the Rangers, 1-year deal. He was on a PTO, actually, but he made the team, 1-year deal for the league minimum of $750K. And I think a lot of us, and I include myself in this, we all tried to talk ourselves into Jimmy Vesey a little bit in the preseason. He obviously, did a nice job, and you got to give him credit. I mean, he came in here 50-50 at best to make this team. Needed a strong preseason showing to make the team. He did that and then some, and he's been on the team ever since, obviously. He's played 11 of the 12 games this season. He was a healthy scratch for one of them. But he's not really cutting it right now offensively either. And it's not really that surprising because since he spent his first tenure with the Rangers, the 3 seasons there, he's just bounced around the league. He's been on 6 different teams in the last 5 years. I mean, it's the Rangers twice. He was on the Rangers and then 4 other teams and now back to the Rangers. But that still counts. It's 2 separate, tenures with the Rangers. And he's not somebody that can really rely on for points. He's a good defensive forward and good on the penalty kill and all that good stuff. But he's not somebody that you can really rely on to produce you points night in, night out, even on like a secondary scoring kind of a basis. I mean, do we really expect Jimmy Vesey to be like an above-average third-line player? Probably not. And I mean, think of the third line that the Rangers rolled out there last night. It's Barclay Goodrow, who I'm a big Goodrow fan, but he's a defensive forward. It's Goodrow, Vesey, and Gauthier. Are we really expecting like big-time production from that line? I mean, it all falls on the top 2 lines and really just those same 5 players that I mentioned not that long ago. And obviously, look, Jimmy Vesey, he scored a goal in this game last night, and give him props for that. He had the puck in the neutral zone, gained the red line, threw it toward the Rangers zone. It kind of bounced off of Kaapo Kakko, so Kakko ends up getting an assist for that. But it bounces off of Kakko, goes to Mika Zibanejad. Zibanejad's along the right side, and Vesey goes to the net, and Mika passes to Vesey, Vesey with the tap-in goal. And I swear to God, when this play was developing and Mika had the puck, I said, you got him. Because I could see Vesey kind of coming open on the other side of the ice, and I was hoping that Mika saw it too. Indeed, he did. He made the pass, and, Vesey scored. And props to Vesey for being in the right spot at the right time here and just making it happen. But, even with that goal, Vesey now has 2 points in 11 games. This is your third-line guy. I mean, Jimmy Vesey is playing on the third line night in and night out. And, of course, there's time for him to pick it up, but not exactly off to a great start as far as points are concerned. Barclay Goodrow, secondary points. Look, Goodrow last year, he was a source of secondary scoring. He had 33 points in 79 games. That was a new career high for Goodrow. But I don't think you can really expect that out of Barclay Goodrow every season. Part of that was he ended up getting some time in the top 6 last year. I don't know that that'll happen as often this year. And if you told me right now that we could get 33 points in 79 games from Barclay Goodrow, I'd sign up for that in about 2 seconds. Thus far this season, just 2 goals and 2 assists in 12 games for Goodrow. Vitaly Kravtsov, I know a lot of us were kind of keeping our fingers crossed that Kravtsov and the Rangers had mended fences and that everything was going to be cool, and everything seems good from that perspective. But Kravtsov has played 4 games for the Rangers this season, no points. And look, I feel for Kravtsov. He gets hurt every time he goes out there. I don't think it's really his fault. He's been in some bad spots. There was that weird play where, Hedman hit him and was pushing down on the back of his head. Kravtsov was hustling in a recent game, gets crunched against the boards. His head slams into the boards. So I feel for Vitaly Kravtsov. But even when he's been out there, you just haven't seen that wow factor. And honestly, with Kravtsov, I feel like he looked better in those 20 games that he played for the Rangers at the end of the season 2 years ago than he has, thus far this season. And again, it's only 4 games, but I'm also including the preseason, which normally I wouldn't do. But Kravtsov had to take the preseason seriously. He had to go out there and kind of establish himself. And, when he played in the preseason and the regular season, you combine all those things together this year, hasn't really shown a whole lot, and fingers crossed that he can figure it out, because sooner or later, again, Rangers are going to need some secondary scoring. Sammy Blais, you know what? This guy still does not have a goal as a member of the New York Rangers. He's got 2 assists in 9 games this season. I understand he's coming back from the ACL injury. It was a dirty play that took him out last year. It's really unfortunate that happened. But Sammy Blais, he's playing on the 4th line. He looks slow, and again, that ACL injury probably has something to do with it. But for somebody that we talk about of having like kind of a sneaky good shot, no goals as a New York Ranger, 17 goals in 142 games, I'm not so sure you can rely on Sammy Blais to give you secondary scoring either. And then you come to guys like Ryan Reeves and Carpenter, and I mean, forget it. That's just not going to happen. That's not their game. They're an enforcer, Reeves, and a defensive 4th line forward in Carpenter. So you're not going to get points out of them. Carpenter has 1 assist this season. Reeves does not have any points. And as far as secondary to scoring, how about from some defensemen besides Adam Fox? Hasn't really happened there either. Keandre Miller, coming into the season, I thought he'd add some more offense to his game, and I think he eventually will. But right now, 3 assists in 12 games. Jacob Trouba, he's supposed to rack up some assists, and I'm not going to hold him to the standard that he set in Winnipeg his last season there, because he was quarterbacking their top power play unit. He's not going to do that with the Rangers. But Trouba's only got 3 assists in 12 games. Zach Jones, a goal and an assist in 9 games. Ryan Lindgren, not really thought of as an offensive defenseman, but even so, just 2 assists in 12 games. There's 5 former first-round forwards on this Ranger team right now. They're still all, very young, but thus far, they're just not getting it done as far as offensive production is concerned. And those 5 are Kakko, Lafreniere, Hedl, Gauthier, and Krasov. And I realize Hedl, he got injured. He's got 3 points in 6 games to start the season. Hedl looked good when he was out there, so fingers crossed that he's back in the Ranger lineup sooner rather than later, and that he can step up, and that somebody besides him can step up. Multiple former first-round forwards can step up for this New York Ranger team. Somebody's got to step up. Or maybe not even these guys. Maybe Vesey can step up. Maybe Goodrow can step up. Maybe Blake can step up. Somebody needs to step up. You cannot rely on the same 5 guys every single night, every single game to score all of your goals for you. And another stat to back this up, did a little math here. Always a risky proposition here on Locked On New York Rangers. But I did a little math. The big 5, again, Mika, Panarin, Kreider, Fox, Trocheck. Those 5 players have combined for 58 points. Yeah, 58 points in the first 5 games, or the first 12 games so far this season. Everybody else has combined for 35 points. So the big 5 have 23 more points than the rest of the team combined. I think that pretty much says it all. So again, fingers crossed that eventually somebody snaps out of it, somebody gets it going, somebody goes on a heater, somebody sparks this team outside of the big 5 that I already mentioned. But that'll pretty much do it for today. I was going to talk about the Lady Liberty jerseys a little bit. We're running a little late here. I'll just say I think they look sharp. They're cool. The only thing that gives me some pause about them is that it was not exactly a wonderful era of New York Ranger hockey the last time that the Rangers were wearing the Lady Liberties. They had that nice run in 1997 when they went to the Eastern Conference Final. That was the 94 Cup team's last chance, I would say, to win another Stanley Cup. They weren't able to do it. But after that, it was not a good era of Ranger hockey. And if you weren't a fan back then, from like 98 until about 2004, you really didn't miss much. It was rough. And they wore those Lady Liberty jerseys a lot, and there was not a lot of winning that went along with it. But Rangers are going to be back in action at home against the Detroit Red Wings on this Sunday. That game starts at 5 p.m. The Red Wings are 5-3-2 to start the season. The Rangers are 6-4-2. And I'll leave you guys with one more stat that might make everybody feel a little bit better, because I always try to be positive on this show, always glass half full. So after 12 games last year, the Rangers had 6 wins and 15 points. After 12 games this year, the Rangers have 6 wins and 14 points. So they're not doing significantly worse this season than they were last season. And honestly, a lot of those games last year, the Rangers were getting outplayed and just winning because Igor Shesterkin went into absolute God mode, which he hasn't quite been able to do this season. I think he's been good, but I think Igor would be the first one to tell you that he's got to step it up a little bit too. And there's so many things I want to talk about. We'll get to Igor in a future episode for sure, but I really wanted to spend some time on the lack of secondary scoring, because it is something that's giving the Rangers an issue. Last year at the trade deadline, they brought in Kopp, they brought in Vetrano to help with the secondary scoring. Right now, it's just not happening, and it won't happen unless former first-round picks eventually take a step forward here. I hope I'm not being too harsh. I hope I'm not being too tough on these guys. Again, I think for some of them, namely Lafreniere and Kakko, what they've done out there is better. They've played better than what their point total would suggest, But again, sooner or later, you need offense from these guys. They didn't draft these guys to not be good offensive players. So, again, fingers crossed that multiple Rangers can step it up and the Rangers get some secondary scoring and get this thing back on track and bounce back with a win on Sunday against the Detroit Red Wings. Hoping to do an episode maybe later that night since it's kind of an early game. We shall see. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. There's a lot of things that go on YouTube before they're available in audio form, and there's some things that exclusively go on the YouTube channel. So definitely make sure to subscribe there. And thanks again, guys. I will see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.